All right, welcome to the still unnamed Wire podcast. When you're hearing this, I'm sure it'll have a title. I don't think it will be blank. I'm one of your hosts, Eric,
And I'm Mike.
and Mike's and you're getting my cadence down when I.
Right. Do I count as a host on this?
Yeah, sure. Because
Okay.
we'll have other comics on later,
Nice.
and then they'll be the guests. But yeah, of course you're a host. Come on, you agreed
Awesome.
to sludge through this with me, and
Yeah.
so you of course you get that play. All right. So today we're going to be doing a twofer. We're going to be talking about The Wire season 1, episodes 2 and 3. Episode 2, The Detail, and episode 3, The Buys. Mike, and so is this after these 2 episodes? Is that as caught up as you are, just the first 3, or have you gone ahead and watched any others?
As far as I know, these are the only 3 episodes I've ever watched.
That
no,
exists,
I take that.
yeah.
I take that back. I watched one other episode, maybe like 7 years ago, and it was where it had Snoop and they buy like a thing from a hardware store to kill somebody with or something.
That is the that is the pilot of season, or not pilot, but opener of season 3, I believe.
Okay.
So and I like that because you almost said some spoilers, but like you just spoiled that one cold open, so that's about it. That is not connected to anything prior to that scene, so it's perfect. All right, sweet. So we'll just go in, and we're going to talk about each episode, and So The Detail picks up where the pilot target leaves off with Gant, the witness who testified's body being discovered by police, and D'Angelo Barksdale looking a little bit iffy, like he did not expect that to happen.
Right.
And it opens up in the morgue with what's I like how cheery I'm saying all this shit. Opens up in the
We're
morgue.
opening up in the morgue. It's a balmy 35 out. We're talking corpses. Wait, a balmy 35? That makes no sense.
It's okay. Hey, you could have just rolled right past it. Everybody, they get it. It's balmy. It's 35. You know what it is.
Okay.
There's some more talk just in general about stats versus solving cases, and we start to see, even though they're partners, McNulty and Bunk, kind of the difference between them.
Right.
They both seem to have, in my opinion, and Mike, feel free to throw in your own spin on it. Seems like they both have their hearts in the right place, but Bunk is definitely I leave this shit when I go home. I kind of leave this shit here.
Right.
Where McNulty, it's just his life, which is something we'll find as a common theme about. Is there anything about this scene in particular that struck you? If not, we can move on. It's just weird. It's the opening scene. I have like nothing to say.
The
about
opening scene where what happens in it again? Where
they're just in the morgue identifying or doing something with
and they're discussing if he was murdered because he was a witness.
Yeah.
Later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Could be. There's a lot of similar scenes where they just discuss. There's a lot of talking in this show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No. But yeah. No. So we can.
In this show or The Wire?
Oh, just in
this podcast.
This podcast is not. You know what?
There's
Not
way
enough
too much
podcast.
talking.
Yeah, not enough car chases in podcasts.
Right.
I feel.
Yeah.
Well, so they do discuss. I think it's weird because as a viewer, like I didn't even think that there was a question. Like I was just like, no, they did it. Like,
Right.
But as I was doing some reading of people, both on Reddit and a couple of blogs about where, what do you think happened at this point? And people seem to be like, well, maybe it was them, maybe it was maybe it was something else. Is that what
That's
you
how I'm
you went
feeling.
through?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not uncommon for people to get killed in Baltimore. Although it is really, I mean, if you think about it, I guess he really wasn't much involved in anything illegal. He was just like a night watchman, wasn't he?
yeah.
Like a
Well,
security guard.
I like how it takes a resident to go. It's like, well, yeah, I can see you just getting killed. Like, well, come on. Yeah, that was just happening.
I walked over several dead security guards just this morning on my way to
Just-
get coffee.
Well, yeah, like I don't know why I laughed so hard at that. It's like that's hilarious. What
A dead construction worker just like fell in front of me.
Yeah, they do have that scene where they just kind of talk about all the different ways you can randomly die in Baltimore just from like walking down the street. So yeah, I guess that rings true for me. for me, I definitely watched it as a viewer, like of TV, of like, oh, okay, so obviously he has a bigger part in the story, and D'Angelo looks upset, so I think it's implied that clearly this was done by.
Well, it's implied that he believes that it's done by, and from my perspective, it probably was, but I wouldn't be shocked if it wasn't.
Yeah.
And I think that's in real life. I think I would feel the same way. Like it most likely was, but if some weird fact came out, that he like, I don't know, owed money to somebody else or something, then
yeah, I guess
it wouldn't shock me too much.
That's true. Yeah, no, that's fair. And this also, when I first saw this was long before, the TV realism we talked about in the last episode, where to me, oh, that character got killed. It's directly in line with our story, and there's no other way. It could not possibly be just a reality thing. No, it's directly tied because that's how TV works.
And it could also be something where D'Angelo, like it wasn't necessarily his crew, but it was just somebody else who was mad at people testifying in general.
That's true. There are definitely more crews out there who don't. Snitching doesn't help anybody. This is just a little Baltimore thing. I guess the cult. There's the whole Deflategate thing with the Patriots. I'm sure you have you heard about this. Have you heard about this? How we the report came out that it kind of looks pretty much like, oh, the Ravens personnel definitely tipped the Colts personnel off to check for it, and that kind of led this whole thing going. Yeah, so I was like, 2 years, dude, just 2 years. Ray Lewis has been gone for 2 years, and everybody's snitching. Like, it's just the culture of that locker room has really gone downhill.
Right.
Anyway, so the next scene, we get into the basement, and where we'll find where our detail gets placed in just a complete shithole, and we meet a character I have been dying to talk about, Presbeluski, and he's the guy who shoots his gun into the wall.
Oh, okay,
and then they make reference to the reason why he's down there. He shot his car or something. He's just a complete moron, doesn't learn his lessons, and just continues to do something stupid, but he's still in active police because he's got some connection higher up.
Yeah, I think his father-in-law is
a major, and we learn that later on in the episode. But this was the parallel I wanted to draw to D'Angelo. He's just a constant fuck up who's put in a reasonable position of authority because he has someone higher up that he is connected to via family, and he just does not. And so Presbeluski has not learned his lesson. He still fires. He's such an idiot. Fired his gun into the wall. He still hasn't learned his lessons, and it seems like that's how D'Angelo is too. And I kind of felt like that was a little bit of foreshadowing of these people like that who keep getting all these chances. Unless something drastic happens to them, they don't learn any lessons.
Yeah, it almost ties into the king stays the king line. It's like, do people change?
And not without some drastic thing happening to them. No, people do not change. So then we head over to so we meet him. We kind of there are a lot of these scenes I want to clarify. When I go through scene by scene, I might jump over something. If I do, please bring it up. But a lot of times, if there's something that happens throughout 3 or 4 scenes, I might wait till the last one to bring it up, just because I'll be like, I mean, why? We don't need to piece it together like that. So then let's jump over to the pit, and we have our whole conversation about McNuggets. The first bit of I guess our pit fires, our whatever fire pit chats from our dealers. And they discuss McNuggets, and it's like the guy who invented this is got to be so rich. And D'Angelo kind of scolds him a little bit. He's just like, nah, the person who created those is in a basement somewhere, which I thought was funny because we just jumped from a basement. And whoever, making money for other people, they're just making a regular wage. And I didn't notice this upon launching it, but when I was reading a couple of recaps and people's observations, somebody had made mention of that when they really talk about making, I forget the exact phrase, but it's the same wage or whatever it is, the wage that they made, no matter how good they worked. It seemed like all the hoppers were kind of just shit, that's us. We're never going to move up. we're just going to be here for until we die, go to jail, or question mark.
Right,
which
yeah.
for a lot of these kids doesn't seem like there is a third option. It's just you
Yeah,
just do this until
that like brings in another thing that I've kind of been thinking about from the beginning is that what is so alluring about drug dealing for these low level guys? Um, in that 50 Cent movie, he kind of talked about how you really don't, you kind of make less than minimum wage, and it's just kind of boring. You're just kind of sitting around and selling all day.
Yeah.
So it makes me wonder like why so many young people want to get into it rather than just getting a regular job. And do they think they're going to move up and become kingpins eventually?
Possibly. I always thought it was it was more like, let's say, I'm trying to think of a less broad or a less specific or a more broad topic than comedy. But for sake of time, because my brain is just farting right now. Let's say you go, like most of your friends are into comedy, or like you're an open micer and you go to these open mics, and the majority of the time you spend talking to people is with other comedians. All they want to do is be funny. It's funny. The merit of your worth and of your value is how funny you are, whether it's on stage or off. And so, if that's the community you are surrounded by or you surround yourself with, then that's what you do. Now, the reason why that's kind of a shitty analogy is because no one's forcing you to be surrounded by comics. It's not like you grew up in an area and that's just like all that anybody did. Like that's a choice that you made. It's not like these people.
Yeah, man. I come from the mean streets of the Comedy Factory.
Yeah, that's
I've seen some things.
Yeah, I've seen some shit at the Giggle Hut. It's fucking rough. It's fucking rough.
Yeah, so you think it's just more peer influence?
Yeah, like say you just say you're a normal kid who goes to like high school and everybody there gives a shit about, like, if maybe in the South, where like high school football is huge. And you're going to school there, and all anybody in your town gives a shit about is football. Yeah. Then you're probably going to have an inflated sense of wanting to be involved in that community somehow.
But don't
so
people, that's just like? I mean, I definitely, when I was younger, I definitely kind of became someone I wasn't in high school, just out of pure pressure, and just a sense of not fitting in and wanting to fit in. But don't people kind of get over that, like, after high school, or like,
if you live past it, yeah. But that's the other thing is that and the internet kind of throws a little wrench into this. But if you never see, like, I'm trying to think about how far into the future, this isn't a spoiler or anything, but later on in the show, you'll find there are various like high-level drug dealers who are like, oh, do you know so-and-so about like this area in D.C., which is not very far from Baltimore? And they'll be like, no, I've like never been to DC. I've never been outside of this city. It's like you've never seen, you don't even know anybody who leaves your small area. And it's and you have to imagine with a lot of the inequality and their interaction with police and authority and just the system in general, you're just kind of like we look at the system like, oh, if we play the game, we can get ahead. But if you were grown up and told, that'd be like, it'd be like us trying to join the drug game. Like us sitting at home, like them going out should be like, I'm just going to leave the city. I'm going to go find a job. I'm going to find a house or whatever, a cheap apartment and work like a minimum wage job because I want to quit this drug thing. That would be like us going, no, I want to like move to the inner city and deal drugs because this college thing just isn't working out. This game is rigged. I don't want to take on this debt. The only option, like, I'm going to go like sell drugs. It's like it's that kind of. Yeah, it's just all positive reinforcement for a system that we're not used to, and negative reinforcement to the system that we're used to. That's how I interpret it anyway. Okay. But who the fuck do I know? Well, I mean, we're just talking about it. Anyway, so we go and we really learn that that Daniels he just got dumped nonstop garbage for his detail. Everyone, like, he thinks that he's doing this great Avon Barksdale case, and it's almost like, at least this is how I interpret it, he's a company man, but he's still like, this is something that needs to get done. He's a narcotics police. And so he's like, this is a great case for me. I want to do this, but he's got to be a company man, so he wants to make sure he doesn't step on anybody's toes. He's just trying to play the cards that he's dealt. But he still kind of cares about the case. enough that when he realizes that everybody just gave him their worst people, that he's like, oh shit, this was a garbage dump. This wasn't an opportunity. This was everyone's chance to shit on my detail. And he starts going around trying to get the other lieutenant who said, I'm on the short list to major, just like you, trying to get some of his better people, because he took Przebylewski off his hands. He's like, so can you please just give me like one of your best guys so I can at least even this out.
Right.
And also in that interaction, he seems to realize that Przebylewski, was the son-in-law of the major, and that this other lieutenant took him on as a favor to the major. And so Daniels is kind of like, oh, I'm still playing the game. I'll get a favor out of the major by keeping him on my detail. This can work out for everybody. Which is nice, but it also just goes to show this push and pull for Daniels between, I want to do this case right, but it's also extremely important for me to maintain all of my standing and in the politics of the police.
Yeah.
And if you notice, those two dudes do talk in the elevator with the cameras on. They're not high up enough to really like notice. Yeah, I noticed that difference. So yeah, garbage dump detail. And so while all that's going on, while he's, I did want to mention to you, I don't know if you noticed this. This took me a while just to kind of wrap my head around. Daniels and Greg's, and then so his cop Greg's, she and those other two cops, Herc and what's his name, Carter. I swear to God, I looked it up today because I was like, I'm gonna know it this time. I'm gonna know
the two old guys.
No. The two like guys who just like to rough up the drug dealers, like the black dude and the white dude.
Oh, the guys that are with Prez.
Carver, yeah, Herc, yes, exactly. Before they meet up with Prez, so like Greg's, Herc, I think, they're all narcotics police. That's why they know rip and runs. They go in, they get the cash and the dope, and that's what they do. Meanwhile, McNulty and a couple of these other guys are from homicide, which is why they're much more into the police work side of things. And if you notice, Daniels kind of pairs them up so that it's like he's got some narcotics people with some murder police. So you end up having like kind of both sides, like the side that knows the narcotics and the other side that is going to build the bigger case. But I did want to point that out because it kind of shows where everybody's coming from, but it's still kind of, point is like McNulty's definitely a different breed than everybody else. Like he's absolutely the outlier. So then we go back to the pit. Meanwhile, all that's happening, and we have McNulty and Bunk come and hang out with our pit crew, with D'Angelo. They tell him, what did you think about him? Okay, so this is something that I actually saw a lot of like debate about online. Were they so just a brief recap of what happens. They go in, they have the conversation about we're not typical police you're used to. We're here to stop the murders. We don't give a shit about drugs. You can do whatever you want with the drugs. Like why? And gives them the whole like uncle speech or big brother speech of like why can't you just sell the shit without having the bodies? Can't you just do that? I love Bodie. Just as what'd you say your name was? I didn't say shit. Okay, Mr. Shit. But yeah, so that happens. They kind of wait until they're hanging out in the pit until Stringer Bell shows up or somebody higher up shows up and takes a look at them, and that's when they arrest D'Angelo, take him downtown, and then they kind of play their emotional manipulation cops to get him to write the letter to Gant's parent or whatever, to Gant's like now orphaned kids, and get him to really feel miserable about anything he might have had a stake in the killing, until D'Angelo's lawyer comes in and pulls him out of there, and it's basically you can't use that letter, right? And then Bunk just kind of tosses the letter aside, like we don't need to use it. We can't use it, and we have no interest in using it. So what did you interpret with that sequence of events? Them coming to the pit, waiting until Stringer Bell sees them, arresting him, interrogating him, getting him to write that letter, and then tossing the letter aside at the end. Like, what was your take on that? Like, what do you think their motivation was?
I mean, I don't know if I looked deeper into, uh, you know, what actually transpired. I just kind of thought they, um, could, you
What do
know,
you?
kind of play with his emotions and try like kind of a different tactic than normal, you know, see if they could get like emotionally involved with.
Okay, so this is like maybe like the first step of a multi-step approach to flipping D'Angelo. If they're like, we need to maybe
Yeah,
they're yeah.
maybe. I guess I hadn't really thought about it, but why would they have any motivation to see D'Angelo as more emotional than other drug dealers, unless they just kind of thought they could do that to any drug dealer?
Yeah, that's true. Well, and we know that. Well, they know D'Angelo's connected directly because his uncle is Avon. So I guess
Right.
he'd be like kind of a really juicy target for them. Yeah, you're right. There's multiple targets, but maybe who knows? Maybe they had some kind of pass with him. He has been in the system for quite some time. He was just
Right.
in jail for the better part of a year.
Hmm.
McNulty followed the case very closely. He's kind of like a young fuck up. Maybe they know that.
Uh huh.
But you're right. They could maybe get any old drug dealer to do that. But hey, who knows? Maybe they've been trying to do that. Maybe
Uh-huh.
they've rolled people.
And
up
it
in the
is, you
past.
know, it seems like kind of in character with McNulty to try different things like that. Like, you know, other cops probably wouldn't think, you know, we could like manipulate this guy through morals and emotion.
Yeah, yeah. And if they think in his stature and his position, he's been safely tucked away from like the parts of the streets that make you really really hard. Is that like
Yeah, that's a good
maybe
point.
he's a guy we can poke? They're raptors in Jurassic Park poking at the cage, looking for weaknesses. Um,
Right.
Now, one of the theories that I heard, which I thought was really cool, was that it had nothing to do with D'Angelo at all. They just got lucky that they figured out D'Angelo was kind of soft. That was actually all a show for Daniels. Like there was one theory that said it was all for Stringer Bell. They just wanted to scare the shit out of Stringer,
Right.
and maybe make Stringer and them make a move, and maybe that would be their way in. But the theory that I thought was really interesting was that it was more about Daniels. So the theory is that McNulty thinks Daniels is a good guy with his heart in the right place, who's interested in the case, but at the same time he knows that he's a company man who wants to like rise in the ranks.
Right.
And he also knows that if Daniels doesn't like isn't fully in on the case, then it's never going to go anywhere. He needs the guy in charge of the case to give a shit about it. Um, so the thought was, why don't we end up just pulling him in there so he can see not only that this guy like is potentially emotional, or that we can maybe flip some of these guys, or maybe there's a case there, but it was also to kind of show them, look how like he needed Daniels to have some kind of definitive proof. As far as McNulty's concerned, he's like, I know that this drug cartel or whatever drug ring is behind all these murders. But Daniels doesn't know that. Daniels is only going on McNulty's evidence and what McNulty had the judge tell the majors. That's why they opened it up. Daniels doesn't know for sure that this is what's going on. But after D'Angelo makes that quote-unquote confession, Daniels has hard evidence of, oh shit, that's the guy's nephew saying we killed those people.
Right.
Including a state's witness. That's the other thing. Gant is a state's witness. Which, and I may be backtracking here. I'm not. I might have skipped that in my notes. But we know that McNulty goes back to meet with the judge, and they kind of go back and forth of should we tip off the papers that a state's witness, which is also unprecedented. But that's not just like McNulty going over everybody's head and telling the judge about the Avon case in the first place. State's witness getting killed, that's a huge fucking deal. Huge deal that the courts, like, it jeopardizes the integrity of the courts. So there's and the mayor's office would want to, hear about that, and the mayor's office would want to do something about it. So it goes much higher than the police at this point, and the last thing the majors want to happen is the police department to look bad on this.
Right.
So they're like, okay, what do we do? Do we tip, like the judge even says, why don't you maybe tip it off to the papers, send it to the Baltimore Sun, and get the news out about that. And that way it'll kind of force the public to force the mayor's hand to really do something about it. But
Right.
McNulty says he doesn't want to like tip his hand to Avon. He doesn't want Avon and Stringer to know that they're all being investigated. But did you notice that, like, I don't know if you remember that, but that hypocrisy of or not whatever contradiction of, then he just goes and waits for Stringer Bell and shows Stringer Bell that they're clearly keeping tabs on them. Did you think that, like, I don't know, that was kind of a weird move, but that might make sense if he didn't want to tip his hand to Stringer and Avon, didn't want them to know, and if it went out in the papers, then they would know. Maybe he was like, you know what, in order to get Daniels to be on board with this, I have to just, like, give up somewhere else. I have to give something up. I have to maybe tip my hand to Avon and Stringer, so fuck it. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it big. I'm going to scare the shit out of them. So what do you think about that theory of all of that was just a ploy to get Daniels to have more credence in the case against Avon and the reason to go after Avon?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Do they leave like kind of a lot of open-ended things like that? Like they don't, like, you know, I'm sure people have asked David Simon and a lot and people who worked on the show if their theories are correct or if they hold water or whatever. Does he like leave a lot of it open?
I haven't looked in specifically with anything he said about it. But as far as I'm talking to you on this level, we're pretending that nothing exists past whatever episode. So just with the information that you have, like, and by the way, to answer your question, we don't have any more information than that. That's just a theory. We have no idea.
Right. I mean, I wouldn't have thought of that, you know. I would have thought more that it was, you know, they're just sort of, you know, it's kind of like the way the church, you know, in years past kind of like quote unquote civilized people was by sort of using morals and, you know, kind of doing the I'm not angry, I'm disappointed in you type of thing.
Yeah.
And I feel like maybe, you know, with McNulty's mind always trying to put together new ideas, he, you know, in the same way that like the drug dealers are coming up with new ways to sell drugs, doing it in a way that no one's ever thought before. Like he's kind of, you know, using this idea that humans are emotional beings who can be manipulated that way too.
Yeah, it's interesting when you point it out like that. It's kind of like a Cold War with small skirmishes throughout.
Yeah,
because it really is just like one side is building a case and the other side is trying to get out of them building a case, and they're just figuring out what the next step is. And by the end of this, we're gonna have, well, potentially, if the detail doesn't get like crumbled in the process, we're gonna have some really, really good cops and some really, really good drug dealers. So next up, in support of the theory that this was all a show for Daniels, then Daniels gets some new guys in the detail. We're back in the basement, and he's briefing them on the case, and it really looks like he's serious, at least in my perception. It looks like he's taking the case very seriously. And then we go back over to the streets. Every time I look on, like whenever I'm looking up for scripts or anything, or like lists of, you know, the scenes in the episode, it'll always go the streets, and then it'll have like a list. And so that's not me just being a corny like white dude. So we have their the only thing I could call it was their community feast is what it looked like. And this is a great scenes like this make me really happy. Or not happy, but it makes me interested to see, or it's interesting to see. So the guy who plays Avon is an actual like dude from the streets. I believe I meant to look that up, but like a good number of these actors,
that's what I heard
like
too.
People from the streets and who have personal experience, and they're not necessarily, they're all actors, but they're not like, they didn't get this job through acting. They got this job through being a good actor who also has life experience.
That seems crazy to me that they could do that and them actually be good actors. You know, I mean, normally when you see like an athlete or like a politician or something like try to do a skit on Saturday Night Live or something like that, you know, they're terrible. Like even like athletes in commercials and stuff.
Yeah,
it's kind of amazing that they could do that.
Just look at Joe Flacco, Hut, Pizza Hut. He's notoriously bad for. Oh my god. So well, they end up. Oh, then you got the other part of the cast, which is like British actors. So you got
Right,
Stringer
yeah.
Bell, who's like this prim proper like British like trained actor.
Yeah, that's always so weird when you see people like that in their regular accents.
Yeah. Well, I love how I don't know if you watched Key and Peele, but they had a sketch about that.
No.
It's just this director, like some like nerdy white guy directing the two of them. One of them is a dude from the streets. The other dude's like a theater actor from England, and they're both like acting. It's basically a parody of The Wire,
Right.
and they're and so like the guy keeps calling cut, and then he looks at like the British dude, and he's like, "Brilliant job! You're really bringing me into a street tough environment. I totally feel where all your character is coming from." But he turns to the actual guy, and he's like, "I just don't buy it. I just don't buy it." But like that was a good scene where I thought like any scene where the two of them are just like, you know, like acting together. I always love watching those. So anyway, so Avon has the sit down at the top of the stairs with D'Angelo, and kind of gives him again the speech of like, you got to stop fucking up. And but then we see D'Angelo, he's really kind of coming unraveled with that. I know it's his uncle, but he can't just start saying, "I know," out loud, "I know you guys did it, and it's fucked up that you did that." Like, that's not only you're not supposed to talk about it, but like he's openly questioning that. Like, if that were anybody else, like, that's insane. But I mean, obviously Avon is cool. He's like, you know, you're my nephew. Just shut up. It's fine.
Right.
Everything's fine. Don't worry about that. You don't have to think. And he really is protecting him. Like, it seems like he's protecting him from more than just the police. He's protecting him from the game itself. He's really like, I'm not going to let you know anything. You don't have to know anything. Just shut up and get paid, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
you don't think they're like that to all the low-level guys?
No, and D'Angelo's not even though he got his demotion, he's still the branch manager of just like the shittiest branch. But like I would bet like even if his number 2 came up and said that, his number 2 may wind up dead or missing, because it's like you can't have people like that in your squad. You can't have people like that.
But as far as like just not letting, as far as just kind of being like, don't worry about it, just make the money, you know, do you think that that's the attitude they have towards everybody?
I do not think so. I think he wants his higher ups to be more involved. He wants them to be better at what they do. But with D'Angelo, it seems like he's just giving him a pass. He's like, he's Presbolewski. Where can we put you where you will not do any more damage to us, but you can just keep on having the thing that we want you to have? Which is, and it's not like it's his son; it's his nephew. That's why it's like, yeah. Anyway, so after that, we have Herc, Presbolewski, and Carver getting a cop staple on the Wire, just getting drunk in a parking lot. And they head over to the high risers, the better, like whatever, like the top spot for.
Now, this is what I was confused about. Were they on duty that night?
I do not think so.
So they just got drunk and decided to do some police work?
Yeah. Well, they're part of a detail, so it's not like they have a shift. It's more like you come when you're required from your commanding officer. They tell you what to do. And they were off, but like they could feasibly, like later on when they say, well, we were doing like reconnaissance work like at 2 a.m. Yeah, like feasibly you could just do that. Like if you McNulty does it plenty, like, but he actually isn't just trying to beat up kids. So they go over to, they get all drunk and hopped up on adrenaline, and this is obviously the first time that any of them have had jobs where they have to build a case. They're used to just cracking skulls and I was about to say the phrase abusing their power, which is what they do. So you can, I mean, I know that's a very gray area of what power people think that they should have and what means they should have to fight this never-ending war on drugs. But obviously, and so they get told to fuck off. Some like 15-year-old kid is pressed up against the car, and Presbolewski completely reasonably pistol whips him in the face for leaning on his car. And I think this might be the first time we hear the phrase shitbird. I'm not sure if we heard it before that, but that's definitely, that is an insult that I had never heard in Baltimore before. It may be from a different era, but like you're gonna hear everybody calling everybody else a shitbird for the next 5 seasons. Yeah, shitbird.
Never heard that once.
Yeah, but on both sides of the law, everybody's calling everybody shitbird. I would love. See, that's the thing I love about TV shows where some things can get lost in translation. Because obviously they tried to Baltimore the fuck out of the show. And you know, one dude's from Baltimore PD, one dude's from Baltimore Sun, so they know the area. But there's so many more people who write and work on the show that like, I forget exactly what scene it's in. Hopefully we haven't gone past it yet, and when I find it, I'll point it out. But there's a point where McNulty, with his doing his best, not doing his American accent, his Baltimore accent, he says it's either Natty Bo or it's something about Old Bay or some Baltimore thing that he says so fucking awkwardly that you can tell you're just like, because he does such a good job, but he said something real fucking awkward.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it doesn't go so well for the cops, and bricks and bottles and gunshots rain down upon them.
Right.
To where they have. I'm sorry.
I was just saying, yeah.
Yeah. And they hide under the car, call for backup, and just get the fuck out of there. Only to so later on we have Daniels comes by the next day to see the wreckage. The car is, I think the car's burnt out at that point. It's just
they completely burned the car. Yeah. Did they leave and leave the car there?
I believe
they're
so.
All night fighting. Okay.
It's a little. You're right. It's very gray in that. Like, I was trying to piece it together myself over the last couple of days, trying to figure out what happened in between that point. The way I interpret it in my head, just for simplicity's sake, is that they ran away and backup came the next morning. Or maybe backup came while they were getting shit rained down upon them, and everybody stopped shooting and throwing shit, and then they got out of there. I have no idea. It's kind of vague. There's a lot of time that elapses between those two scenes. So anyway, Daniels goes and kind of like, it's like, who did it? And when Przybylowski admits it and he asks why he did it, he says, because he pissed me off.
Right.
And so then Daniels, knowing full well that this guy is an idiot, this guy's an asshole, this guy did a horrible, horrible thing, he has that knee-jerk reaction of, he's one of my guys, I need to protect him.
Yeah.
So what did you think? Like, so were you like me the first time I saw it, where you're just getting pushed and pulled on Daniels left and right, or did you have kind of a firmer belief on him?
No, I like so many characters in this, they're complex, but I kind of thought that kind of pushed the line into, okay, I don't like this character now.
Okay, see, that's
like
what
he's morally inept. If he's willing to not stand up for a kid that has like permanent damage to his eye, then it's hard to think that he's a good cop.
Now the just playing devil's advocate to that is that if he comes down on Przybylowski, not only does he really fuck up his chances of becoming a major and his political standing, you also end up with it looks really bad on him just in general. Right. And it also looks bad on the rest of the unit. So, no, you know what? I'm actually just supporting you even more. It's just, it's like, what do you stand for? Do you stand for
exactly
the right thing? But it's also so tough because it's like, what happens when, other than McNulty, literal 0 people are risking their careers? And Daniels actually has a really, really good shot at becoming like really, really successful in it.
Right.
And it's hard to tell because it's like, on one hand, you'd go, okay, you know what? The ends justify the means. If he can make some real change at a higher level, then that's incredible. Right. If he can just take all this shit that he's seen and deal with it once he gets to a place where he can actually...
Yeah, there is that, but
is he actually going to do that if he becomes major? Or is he just going to go for the next thing? Like, what's his goal? Like,
that's probably what he tells himself, because I do think he ultimately wants to do right, but I don't know. By the type of morals I would judge people by, I would say that that's just wrong.
Yeah. Well, so that leads into our next scene where you see him with his wife, Marla, and that immediately answered some of the questions that I had, because his wife is not giving a shit about anything with the case. except for this kid got blind, or this, yeah, because, or not that he got blind. I don't know if she knows that yet. He just knows that, she just keeps telling him, don't get involved, don't get involved. It seems like she can tell him everything that he's not supposed to be doing. She's like, you can't lose the game if you don't play. Just don't get involved. Keep getting promoted. What she's not listening to is that he's not in a situation where he can just do that in any way, shape, or form, whether it's by supporting the kid, whatever. Yeah. But it pissed me off because she wasn't giving any possible solution. She was really just like, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. And he eventually just kind of collapsed. And I hate when I see dudes do this. They just collapse in themselves. Okay.
Yeah.
You're right, honey. You're a genius. I'm sorry. It's just like, dude. But I think that, now I'm not sure if we get into what she does for a living yet, but if you look around them, I mean, he's a lieutenant in Baltimore City. Look around them. Their house is amazing. They're like, listen to classical music. They got all this fine china. They're just, they're extremely well-to-do people. Mm-hmm. So it makes me think that either she has a much bigger job than he does, and that's where like they make money, or she's just pushing him. And this is kind of why I think what tips the scales in his morality versus ambition, like scale, is that she's telling him, I don't give a shit what you do. Get promoted. Get more money, get more prestige, get more power. That's what that seems to be her, because she, throughout the episodes, kind of jumps between being moral and being amoral for him, like telling him what to do. Because once we find out the kid's blind, she's all about being moral. But it doesn't seem to matter amoral or moral, because she's just the one common thread that she has is keep rising in the ranks. And so I think to him, it's not just a struggle between his morals and his ambition, it's a struggle between his morals and his life. He's leading two lives. He's leading the life where he needs to be a prim, proper, rich guy, fueled by the woman he loves, that he clearly is crazy about. Like, I mean, he's either completely beaten down. No, I think he's crazy about her. I don't know. What was your take on their relationship?
Pretty much just what you said.
Okay.
She seemed pretty materialistic. He wanted to please her, and yeah, he's probably a man who's somewhat conflicted.
Now, I may or may not be reading too much into this, because I'm in like a transitionary period in my career where my wife is very much just like, no, get this so you can get the next thing. Do this so you can, and then so for me, I'm just like Daniel, stand your ground, because now, to be fair, I don't have any of the moral complications that that kind of.
Yeah, I might. I might be in the same. My personal experiences might be skewing my vision of it as well, because I definitely had a relationship once where I was like with someone who, was all about. Having enough money to live the way that she wanted to, and everything else is kind of like pushed to the side. Not that, blinding children was ever part of the equation, but...
Yeah, of course.
And me wanting to, like my self-esteem kind of being in her hands.
Yeah.
And, I think people fall into that sometimes, whether it's male to female or female to male.
You're doing okay now, though, right, bud?
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
Oh, good.
Thanks for checking in, though.
Yeah, absolutely. And not for you, Mike. This is for any listeners who watch Game of Thrones. So, very much is a very similar situation to a Jorah Mormont, who ends up taking. He can't satisfy his wife with all the riches because he runs out of money trying to buy her shit. And then he starts becoming an illegal slave trader to make ends meet and gets exiled. So
I don't think I was anywhere close to human trafficking, but I literally right before I became a comedian, I had started at this horrible job that I did not want to be in. That was going to be my life from now on. About to marry this person, and just completely go down a route that I didn't. It was I was this close to being just like this character,
Do you know how many comics I've talked to who said they started doing comedy the day after they got divorced?
That's kind of how mine was.
Yeah, it was just one, but now I guess two. Yeah.
I had left this restaurant to go work at this pipe locating service or something that her brother worked for that she thought I could make money at. and she broke up with me like 2 weeks after I started that. And so I like went right back to the restaurant I was at before, and just went. So you know, I had to live with my mom, and it was like a self-esteem thing too. It is like crazy how any of us can get caught in the trap of like allowing somebody else to like kind of control us through self-esteem. Not that I think that this girl was like a horrible person or anything like that. It was just kind of,
she's a big listener of the podcast.
Just like kind of a. Yeah, she's cool. She's come see me perform a few times since we've broken up. But just like that type of personality, you just like, it's just some people kind of, I don't know. I think we just weren't a good match.
I like the idea of, it's like when you see an ex of yours and they're like, maybe like this girl breaks up with a guy and the guy starts lifting weights. She sees him again, runs into him at the mall, and he's all looking really good. And she's like, oh my God. That's like you, but with comedy. She comes in, she's like, oh my God, you got so funny.
No, it totally is, dude. Yeah, it is like, if there was any resentment there, I totally got my revenge when her friends were like calling me up and stuff and wanted to come see me and told me like, God, we were talking. I wish you and her were still together. So,
but since you're not,
yeah. And they were telling me that the guy she was dating was like living on unemployment.
Oh my God, yeah.
So that felt good. But I don't really, I wish her the best. I don't really feel.
Did you now with her friends who called you up? Did you open any of their mics?
Did I? What?
I don't know. I'm trying to make a shitty stand-up pun.
No.
All right, so in the middle of all this, this happens twice in this episode, which confused the shit out of me until I like really rewatched it. There are two scenes where people wake up to news in this episode, which I think is really funny, and they happen 10 minutes apart from each other. McNulty wakes up to find that somebody leaked, probably the judge, leaked the story about the state's witness getting murdered to the papers. Or maybe McNulty. I forget exactly which got confirmed. So he wakes up to that, and then 10 minutes later, Daniels wakes up to news about the kid being blind in one eye. And that's when our episode ends. So shit gets pretty real at the very end of that episode, where we just talked about how do people change? It takes like drastic life things to happen. Maybe this pistol whipping thing was just another one of those million police brutality things that Daniels had to overlook. Before he got there, Herc and Carver are counting. They're like, well, this makes an even 4 brutality cases against us this year or whatever. That's another stat they're bragging about. But they that could just be a run-of-the-mill thing. But this time, a kid got really injured, and I don't know if I'm just projecting or I'm just making assumptions. But for whatever reason, in that moment, I felt like, and I don't know Daniel's background. I'm not going to spoil it. Even if I did, I wouldn't spoil it for you if we figure it out later. Maybe I'll learn along with you. But I felt like he really kind of related to that 15-year-old kid. Like it felt briefly like, that something like that could have happened to me. That's just a vibe I got. Like a lot of empathy coming from it. Which may explain why, even if he's a company man, his heart is still in a very different place than everybody else. But yeah, so that's where the episode ends. Now I'm going to scroll through this real quick. Do you have anything else to add before we jump into the next episode?
No, I don't think so. The only thing that I kind of started picking up on a little bit that I feel like we're probably going to have to nitpick little things in this if we're going on the basis that this is one of the best television shows ever made.
Yes, please do.
It almost seems like they're, how like in horror movies now, they make a point of showing you, oh, we're not following the horror conventions. Mm-hmm. You thought this was going to happen. We knew you thought this was going to happen, so we're twisting it.
Yeah.
And it almost feels like they're following that a little bit, which can get kind of gimmicky in the sense that the idea is here humans are complex. These aren't your standard archetypal good guys, bad guys. And they almost seem like they are pushing that a little too far to make a point of it,
Oh, okay. And one thing I think is interesting about that observation, just from a historical perspective, TV historical perspective, is that because this is one of those first couple shows, it's one of the first 2 shows to really have an anti-hero as a main character.
Right.
Or anti-heroes as all the characters, is that, like, if they didn't beat that home, maybe people would either not notice, or like we're really at an age where people were still like, no, please, even just a few years ago, please tell me who to root for and tell me who to hate. If you don't do that,
that's generally how it is with any media. You meet your hero within the first few minutes, and
he saves
it's only really good media that challenges that. But like I said, if they're throwing out all the rules and conventions anyway, then I'm going to notice little things like that where it's.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely, and it's good to point those things out. But you don't remember the opening scene where McNulty kicks down the door to that drug den and saves that kitten from all those drug dealers who are about to torture it? You don't remember that? That was like a really pivotal scene for his character.
It's weird that we didn't talk about that.
Yeah. So then we've got so there's some things. Yeah, so it's funny that never came up.
And he yells that pivotal line, "Time to take out the trash," before he knocks the guy into a trash can.
Yeah. And he's like, he busts in, it's, "You've got to be kidding me."
Wow.
All right. That shot was pretty. All right, so let's talk about the buys. I wanted to do these two together. We'll do this one a little quicker than the previous episode. We open in the pit. They're waiting for, like, the junkies are waiting for them to file up, put everything in the vials so they can start selling. That's what I imagine the Apple store is like before they have to put out any new product anyway. So it's not that our worlds can collide.
All the junkies are waiting outside the Apple store.
Exactly, just like, hey man, you got it. Yeah, you got the new iPhone? Nah, dude. And then goes the next guy at the Genius Bar. You got the new iPhone
for an app.
I'll suck your dick. That sounds like the worst restaurant ever. So let's see. So the only thing I want to point out from this scene is that D'Angelo basically delivers the exact same monologue that McNulty gives him.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And, so that was like, that was a big one for me. I was like, although now that I'm thinking back on it, I feel like those other drug dealers were kind of there when McNulty said it. So
here's the weird part, though. We kind of touched on this last time, and tell me if I'm getting way too off on a tangent. I think most drug dealers, in the last 30 years, have come to that same conclusion, that we got to keep it as few bodies as possible, as few fights as possible. And they've actually done studies. Everybody's, assumed that the high murder rates from the late 60s to the early 90s were a result of crack and the drug trade. And apparently they've done a lot of studies that have showed, no, it's just young guys getting pissed off at each other. And some of them are involved in the drug trade, and, gang members tend to be involved in drugs, and so there's always like a correlation. But apparently, the self-policing of the drug addict and the drug dealer is not what is responsible for high numbers of homicides in inner cities.
That's interesting. I heard it was mostly, the study I saw last time I saw one was maybe 2005, and the study was saying that the majority of Baltimore murders, like vast majority, were gang related and drug related. But that doesn't mean it's part of the drug gang.
Right, exactly.
And who knows how those stats are padded? Because I didn't see the study; I just saw the stat. But yeah. So then the other thing, and this happened in the previous episode, but I wanted to wait to touch on it. I just love that Bubbles hat scene, like the way that he uses the visual.
But I have questions about that too.
Okay.
It was a cool scene. It's very clever. It's very interesting. But why wouldn't he just point out who is who in the pictures?
Because he said he's not good at linking names to faces. So he ends up taking. So it's like he could go. I'm trying to think. Never mind. That actually doesn't make sense. I was actually just accidentally uncovering another inconsistency. So they take the pictures. And he puts the hat on so then he can later identify who's who. But yeah, that's fair. They could just go in and take pictures. He could just stand in an area and go, or he could stand on the rooftop and go, okay, take a picture of them.
Right.
Zoom in, and then I'll tell you later. But I think it's because they were just trying to do for quality control. He would just put the hat on the people who were like the main people. He only ends up getting like 12 people with the hat. That's how they I think it was just to save time, but again, it was just a really cool scene. So you're right. It was a little a little danger.
And it seems kind of impractical too. Like,
it was
what
pretty
if
impractical.
what if they're just like, get the fuck away from me before he pulls out the hat, or
he's a
if they
junkie,
steal the hats or put the hats on each other or something. It almost seems like a little too clever and not realistic.
That's what we call in the Magic the Gathering community. We call that the danger of doing cool things. It's impractical for strategy, but it makes you feel good because it looks cool.
I am far familiar with the slogans of the Magic the Gathering.
Are you for real?
No, I'm just kidding.
Son of a bitch. No. All right.
You got so excited there for a minute.
I did. I was about to change the theme of this podcast.
All right, let me put on my wizard cap and welcome to the Magic Cast.
I don't wear my wizard cap.
Oh, excuse me. Sorry.
Yeah. So then later on we go to a scene of the higher-ups, the majors, discussing what they call the riot, which saying that in the middle of 2015, calling that a riot is a little bit funny. But that's what they refer to it as. The shows, the riot. And that's when, I believe that's the first time we meet Presbeluski's father-in-law, who sees Daniels, and he's just like, basically, you take the blame for this. Like, let's have you take the blame for this a little bit, and just know that you have a couple of really high-up people who are going to owe you one. You care about your career, right? They're like fucking pimps. Like, you want to get famous, baby? You just suck this dick a little bit, and we'll make it up to you in the long run. And so I don't like. Oh, this is something else I wanted to mention just very briefly. Was through the Baltimore riots this year, the real life Baltimore riots. It was so interesting watching a combination of local news, national news, even pop culture news, like watching the take on it on the Daily Show. And watching live cams of people who were like there, including people who would just go in with their fucking Periscope or whatever, their live stream, and just go to places and try to capture whatever they could. And having friends who, were there for you being there. Like the national media and the wrap-ups on shows like Daily Show or wherever, whatever the other news outlets were way different than what I saw just locally. It was like it was so much more nuanced when I experienced it secondhand from people who were there or from local news, in that it seemed like there were definitely different groups of people doing very different things for very different reasons.
Right.
But whether you were on the side of they're all destroying society, all the people doing that are overreacting, or you were on the side of it was justified because of all the horrible things that were happening, and this is the only way to like respond or to react, to have some kind of voice, regardless what side of people were on, both of them lumped all of these different groups into the same group.
Sure. Yeah.
And so, like, I was wondering what your take on that was. Do you find that, like, and now I kept thinking back, I was like, what about all these other, like, things that we saw in the news that we only got a national perspective on? How more nuanced are those than what we were told?
Right. Well, my take on the Baltimore riots in general, and like you said, they really didn't end up being that bad of riots. Thankfully, nobody was killed.
Nobody died. That's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say they differ from, like, the LA riots in that nobody waited for a trial, The violence started before a trial, which is unfair. I mean, that's not how it works in America. If you are accused of something, you get a fair trial. If there's overwhelming evidence against the police officers and they still were let go, kind of like in the Rodney King case, then I would say a riot is in fact warranted, because that's how democracy works. Is, if the government is corrupt, then you have an armed militia. And today's kind of equivalent of that is destroying shit on camera. That's you're not going to be able to go up against the government with your militia these days.
Yeah,
but you can cause like public, a public outcry by committing acts of hopefully non-lethal violence on camera.
Absolutely.
As far as coverage, I definitely, of course it's always unfair to the peaceful protesters when they get lumped in.
That's kind of what I mean, yeah.
And like for me, working at a restaurant at the time, I got to know a lot of friends who were from those areas and grew up dealing with the police and dealing with other, crime in their neighborhood and stuff like that. And a lot of them were kind of like, yeah, the people destroying stuff right now are not doing it because they're fighting for freedom. You know, they just want to destroy crap and steal things, which may or may not be true. But you know, I think yeah, it's unfair that kind of everybody gets lumped together.
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad we solved the Baltimore riot situation in 4
Done
minutes.
and
Less.
done.
Done and done. Good
Yeah,
game.
put that on the Wikipedia page, folks.
There is, yeah, right. There are plenty more that we'll talk about throughout this, throughout
I'm sure.
discussing this season. But like, I'm glad we got to intro that with that. So anyway, so just moving along with this. So we're in the basement. Turns out the new guys that Daniel's got are not so good. They seem to be either washed up at the end of their rope, or they just do not give a shit about this case.
Right.
No matter how good of cops they are, they're still, whether they're being told not to care or they or they just don't care, then that's that. So I want to jump back into the pit. We have another fire pit chat while they're playing chess, and and D'Angelo's saying like, well, I think the quote is the pawns get capped quick, and then Bodhi says unless they're smart ass pawns.
Right.
And
that was a great
I
line.
love that line.
Yeah, me too.
And as we kind of, we're gonna see more of Bodhi, but it's just like that is definitely not a coincidence. He will, and we actually see it later in this episode. He is one smart ass pawn. Like the guy he's very smart. And I just think it's nice to have. I feel like a typical show would make that character like the D'Angelo character. It's like, no, he's really smart. He can make it out of this. But then you got Bodhi, who's just like, he actually is that guy who, if he was born like 10 miles down the road,
right,
the dude would be a genius. Like he's doing a lot with what he has. So we then find out that the guy who's been assigned to be partners with McNulty in this new unit, one of the better cops, is snitching to Rawls. He's going to Daniel's boss. And he's saying, like, I'm going to tell you everything McNulty does, everything that that happens with him. Obviously, he's a company man. He just does not give a shit. So then we got this guy who we saw very briefly up until this point. He's kind of like painting figurines or whatever, like in the basement. And at first, I was just confused as shit because I was like, is he assigned to this detail or not? Like, what is he doing?
right.
And I guess he was a guy who, I mean, we'll learn his story later, but he's in the pawn unit, the pawn shop unit. So I can't tell. I still don't know exactly what the pawn shop unit is. I'll look that up for next time or for when it really matters. But he's this guy who just clearly, he just looks beat down. Like he just, or maybe just doesn't give a shit. But he's not like a company man. Don't give a shit. I just want to collect my paycheck and go home and paint figurines while I'm here. He's kind of a mystery. But all of a sudden, he gets this twinkle in his eye when he starts hearing them talk about the case. And he goes down to this gym that's in the middle of fucking nowhere, goes to this gym, talks to a guy, and gets a photo of Avon Barksdale at like 18 years old, and just plops it on the desk. And when they ask him how he got it or what, he smiles and walks away.
Did he just recognize the name? Is that like, did he just recall that he was a fighter?
Yeah, I think, well, somebody else said something about him being a fighter, like some random DEA or somewhere, like had something in him. Yeah, so he's, he put the pieces together. So to me, actually, I'm not going to tell you, what do you think of him? So based on that knowledge, he's some guy who's just in the basement doing nothing that resembles police work, gets a twinkle in his eye when he hears about this case, puts those pieces together, and collects the first real evidence against Avon Barksdale. The first piece of evidence giving them information on Avon Barksdale. Do you have any perceptions of him yet? Is he still just that much of an enigma, or do you have any?
Yeah, well, I would guess that he's somebody who is just so burned out and sick of the way the system works that he just doesn't care anymore. And then he catches a glimpse of a couple cops who do care and who are into this case. And like that kind of like rekindles his, what he probably joined the force thinking would happen.
Yeah. That's definitely good, and we'll keep getting into his character as we go. I also liked how after he gave him that picture, he just went back to painting his thing.
Yeah.
So that further confused me because I was like, who is this guy? This guy is they're great at creating enigmas, backstories. Then we have McNulty goes back to the FBI, his buddy at the FBI, to watch the wrap up of the surveillance thing. Watch them get arrested. And the FBI dude's talking about career making case, even though he's getting all his help from McNulty. McNulty's like supplying him with all this information. So it's almost like, man, if McNulty just like joined the FBI, it'd be a whole other ball game for him. It seems like they would actually appreciate his work ethic in there, but that's just for whatever reason that's not where he ended up. So we're going back to the pit. They're getting the tasters out, and we meet Omar. So we meet Omar and his crew, and I'm just going to go through the Omar story very quickly of this episode because I want to get your opinion on him. So we meet Omar. They're staking, just like the cops. They're staking out.
I thought they were cops at first.
Yeah, I was going to ask what you thought they were. Yeah. And turns out they are a stick-up crew, a crew who just goes around and robs drug dealers. Wow. They clearly didn't want to kill anybody because they very much could have and should have once they said Omar's name.
Right.
But they didn't. It seemed like for whatever reason they very much did not want to kill anybody. They just wanted to take their shit out. Do you have any opinion on Omar yet? Any idea about anything with him?
No, he seems like an interesting character. He kind of reminds me of the second 50 Cent reference this episode. The real 50 Cent. Like he's named after a notorious stick-up kid who would go around Brooklyn pulling guns on drug dealers and taking their money and anyone else that he could rob, including, I think, several famous rappers.
Yeah.
And but it does seem a little unrealistic that someone could do that. Wouldn't someone like that be killed very quickly if they were going around like pulling guns on drug dealers and taking their money and their stash?
Yeah, unless you're very smart or very good at it, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, like being in the same city every day and doing that, like.
I feel like we'll see more of Omar soon enough, and we'll get some answers to that. But that's a very good point. That's a very good question. And by the way, the original 50 Cent is, of course, John F. Kennedy.
Yes.
$50. All right. Anyway, that bombed. Jesus. Okay. So let's see. So we go back to the basement. We find out that Greg's is gay, and which
did you look up real quick who was on the 50 Cent piece?
Of course I did.
Yeah,
of course I did. It probably would have been better if I immediately said it, but yeah. So we find out that she's gay, and then my note is, also, and she loves the job, because that's what that scene established.
Right.
And one thing that, and we're going to talk about this in much more depth as we see characters start making sacrifices for the Force. But I wanted to ask you, so we got a bunch of characters who are making major life sacrifices and putting way more time than is worth it for their money, for their psyche, for their emotions, into this thing that they just love doing so much. Does any other profession remind you of that? You get paid very little, you put in overtime, you lose lots of friends and family.
Oh yeah, my whole life.
Yeah, any artist, especially performing artist, it's just this love for this thing that I've never seen anybody with a job really have that kind of love for something that treats you like such shit that is so...
Yeah, that was kind of weird, like that you would say that.
Yeah, I think that's...
strange.
Yeah, and we'll see that kind of come across, and that's just something that, as you're watching the episodes, and I do this too, keep an eye out for anytime you see these parallels between whether it's music, comedy, or performing arts and the police force, because it seems like there's just something about these jobs that, like, it's bigger than anything else in life. It's that whole. It sounds like we're recording this on a plane.
Oh, because of the fan?
It's okay, though. No, it's fine. It's almost comforting. I just wanted to say that because people give me shit whenever I have sounds because they're like, oh, you can't get your mic thing right. I was like, listen, as long as we establish why it sounds like butt, I'm okay with the butt sounds.
I don't want my phone to overheat again.
I know. I don't either. So anyway, we're back at Orlando's. Stringer compliments D'Angelo because he's bringing in some real money. The dude knows how to run a business, so that's good for D'Angelo.
So he's not a complete fuck up. Like we keep saying that he just keeps messing up over and over, but he's pretty good at what he does.
Oh yeah, And we get a nice little an eye into the marketing aspect of drug dealing, where Stringer's like, he's like, well, I can't, or D'Angelo's like, I can't wait till we get that new package. And Stringer looks at him like he's crazy. He's like, there's no new package. We put that shit in a different color bottle. Like, that's just what you do. Like, it's brilliant marketing. And then
people just think that it's a different, like a better product.
Yeah. They're like, no, this is the new shit. And they call it something else. And it's the same shit. He's like, he said we might spike it with some caffeine. It makes people feel good. It's the same shit, though. Right. D decides to spend some of his bonus money that Bell gives him on a stripper prostitute lady. So we can. That's also non-pertinent for now. We have Bubs judging the one cop on his shitty junkie outfit, which was just kind of a cool scene. Do you have any thoughts on that? I'm kind of breezing by it because it's just like, I don't anticipate this being the first time anybody's hearing about the episode if they're actually watching it. So, like, yeah.
It is a little comforting to know that addicts seem to look a little bit better than they did 12 years ago on the street.
Yeah,
like, I don't think anybody's that hobo-ish looking anymore. But I think that was the norm just not very long ago.
Yeah. So, briefly, as we're just about getting towards the end of the episode, we see them doing hand-to-hands in the pit. So they're going to the pit, and this is like, I'm trying to make sure I don't go too out of order here. So they do some hand-to-hands in the pit, get some arrests and whatever. And I just wanted to point out, or I forget if they get arrested. That's not important. What is important is as we're going around and just seeing like exposition shots in the pit, it looks like a fucking third world country, and they're actually shooting in Baltimore. I get that they're setting it up so that it's like a drug haven. But it looks like a fucking refugee town.
Oh, yeah. You see that all the time in Baltimore.
And yeah, exactly. And I want to bring that up because Baltimore is like, that section of Baltimore is literal neighborhoods away from like nice areas.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, I'm laughing. There's a group of people outside of my backyard just kind of like standing around, which is weird. They're playing football. Yeah, because there was a guy who was like, what was pressed into another guy's crotch? And I was like, what's happening?
Yeah, I thought I was going to get famous there for a second. You know, like the guy who was talking to the guy who got murdered during a live podcast.
Oh my God. Like that. I didn't hear about that, but
no, I'm saying that would be our situation.
Yeah. Talking about
be able to capitalize.
Yeah,
I'd be like the murder comedian.
Yeah. Oh my God. Dude, yeah. No,
When is that going to happen? Like, there's got to be some point where, like, something like that happens during a podcast or, like, during a...
Yeah. That's Thanks a lot. No.
Sorry.
All right, so anyway, by the way, everything I said was true, though. I wasn't just making shit up. That's exactly what happened. I saw two shirtless guys with butt in crotch, and then I was like, oh, they're playing football. So anyway, okay, so we're back in the basement. The higher-ups basically want to use... the hand-to-hands in the pit. Oh, yeah, that's right. They don't make any arrests. They're just, like, getting shots of, like, okay, we can now arrest these people because we know that they were selling drugs. We know where their stash is, as of right now, anyway. Higher-ups are like, we're going in there, and we're getting this shit, and we're going to arrest people, get money and dope on the table. And here's where we have our big standoff between McNulty and Daniels, or one of the big standoffs, because he's just like, that's going to ruin out all the case that we're building. That's going to throw everything out the window. Right. And that's going to effectively shut down the detail, and the case is going to be done. Because, yeah, the higher-ups just want them to do that, and then maybe that'll get the judge off their asses, make them look better in the press, and that's it. That's just what they're manipulating public opinion to get what they want. And McNulty knows that's going to shut down the case. And he's real pissed because he's like, I fucking thought I had Daniel giving a shit. Daniel's giving a shit.
Right.
And obviously Daniels has chosen, in that instance, he's chosen the company over his morals. And so just for time's sake, I want to blow by a couple things and then we'll recap whatever. So then we have McNulty blows off some steam, gets drunk as per usual, and shows up at Rhonda Perlman, the lawyer, the redhead lawyer from earlier, her house, and we find out that she is the other woman. She's why McNulty is single. She was he was having an affair with her, and and then got basically busted and got divorced, which is why he is in the state that he is in. This is apparently pretty fresh. So he gets information on cloning beepers because the law is the job is his first love, fucking obviously. Just like Bubs and the needle. You're married to the job, you're married to the needle. And they bang it out with a pretty I haven't seen a sex scene that unnecessarily long and awkward since The Room. Although I don't know when The Room came out. We'll see. I could just be wrong.
It is weird how I get so excited to see a breast on a show like that, though. Like, you can look on the internet and see any and every breast you want to in a matter of seconds, but it's like, for some reason, on like a serious drama, to see a nude woman that you just saw clothed, it's like the greatest thing on the planet.
Well, that's what's confusing to me is that, like, or not confusing. I saw a breast and I got very confused. That I actually am the opposite. I don't like any kind of any nudity on my HBO shows. If I want to watch TV, I'll watch TV. If I want to watch other stuff, I'll watch other stuff.
Sure.
But I'm gonna that's what I mean. Like, I just want you don't need to dip chocolate into all the peanut butter. Like, is what I'm saying.
Do you think that was another mainstream baiting or something?
Yeah, probably. And by the way, probably also with the next time Daniels and McNulty get in an argument, McDaniels literally says the line, "I got the deputy ops on my ass for this."
The what?
It was a line that you had mentioned in the pilot. You're like, yes, sometimes they have those 80s copies. Okay. McNulty, I got the deputy ops on my damn ass. And
right.
I was like, holy shit, that's practically a line straight out of Lethal Weapon. And I think some of that is also like, let's give them what let's give the people what they want. So then they raid the pit and they don't get shit because Omar has it and they move the stash anyway. And then we see McDaniels with a look on his face. What did you, like, kind of a knowing look or even kind of a guilty look? Did you interpret that in any way? Or
no, not that I can think of. I actually don't even remember seeing the look.
Okay. Well, he gives this look that to me says...
I was still thinking about the boob.
Oh, yeah. You can't stop.
Sorry, go ahead. We were discussing boobs.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, I was. I was discussing boobs. So boobs, when he boobed the boob and boob. Boop, 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 boop. What if I was saying real words and that was just what happened in your head? So boop, boop, boop. So what I interpreted it as, and I don't actually remember if this is the reason why I blank. For whatever reason, I'm forgetting just as much as I don't know, whatever I ever did, even though I just saw the episode. I was looking at it like, oh shit, did he specifically tell them the wrong spot to go in, or did he know they would have moved the stash by then? And so he told them to go to an old stash location. Because if he's truly invested in the case, then he knows that that if they don't find anything, then it's not going to satisfy the judge or the public. So do you think there's a chance that he sabotaged it himself, and that's why he was like,
maybe.
Shut the fuck
That's
up.
a good point. That's very possible.
Then again, the very next scene, McNulty meets with his FBI guy, and the FBI guy says, Daniels is dirty. We had this file on him. He's got hundreds of thousands of dollars, or $180,000 in liquid assets, fine china, maybe, a nice house, where that are completely unaccounted for. We gave the file to Burrell and said, your guy is dirty, and nothing ever happened with it.
Yeah.
Which may mean that Daniels is not only in Burrell's pocket for money, but he also might have some dirt on him. And so if Daniels steps out of line, not only will his wife be pissed, not only will he ruin potentially his career, but his boss might end up going, you're also going to get kicked off the force or jail or who knows what. Yeah. It could be a lot bigger than that. So they keep pushing and pulling us. The second we get something that's like, Daniels is a good guy. Nope, Daniels is a piece of shit. Like, Daniels is a guy. So who knows? So I guess we're left with ambiguity. Now, I got to go pick up an infinite daycare or something. I don't know. I'll have to go check my to-do list, make sure that's what I'm supposed to do. No, that is absolutely what I'm going to do. Do you have any final thoughts on these episodes?
No, but I'm definitely hooked in. I'm definitely in suspense.
Oh, good.
And looking forward to the next ones.
All right, sweet. So what I would say, I will hit you up soon. Well, you know what? We don't have to discuss our problem solving and plans on air. Let's say bye, and then we'll come back for the next one. And once I stop the broadcast, we'll talk for a minute.
Sounds good.
All right, sweet. So for Unnamed Wire Podcast, you just wait till we have a name, and it's just going to be like Wire. And then you're going to see my mouth moving a bunch. Wire. All right. I'm Eric.
And I'm Mike.
All right. We will catch you guys next week for Untitled Wire Podcast. All right. See ya.
Bye, everybody.